Happening now on Grid Night. Bubba Wallace sitting out this weekend after getting suspended. The NASCAR have no choice but to come down hard on Bubba for retaliating against Kyle Larson. Formula E released an updated season 9 calendar. What's new and are the chances of a race on America next year disappearing? Corvette Racing's back in IMSA and the FIA World Endurance Championship in 2023. Who's returning and what big changes are in store for General Motors? Hello to all of our viewers watching here in the United States and around the world. Welcome to Grid Tonight, your weekly motorsports news program. I'm Kobe Lambert from the Podium Finish, and with me is Joshua Birch and Ben Snyder. We encourage everyone to comment in the chat below and ask questions. Now here's Josh with our top story this evening.
Yes, and our top story, Bubba Wallace was issued a one-race suspension by NASCAR for the incident with Kyle Larson last Sunday at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Revisiting the incident heard around the world, Wallace unfortunately had a fast number 45 McDonald's Toyota, the same 23XI race car won with several weeks ago as well at the Kansas Speedway. Wallace won stage 1 in Las Vegas and things went terribly wrong when he was squeezed into the wall by Kyle Larson. Showing his frustration with the number 5 Chevrolet, Wallace came down the track on the front stretch and right hooked Larson. Both drivers crashed out of the race and taking out playoff driver as well, Christopher Bell, a Toyota teammate of Wallace in the process. Wallace got out of the car and in frustration walked over to Larson, tried to fight him, but Larson refused. Now, we'll give Kobe an opportunity to share his first thoughts publicly on this incident. Simple question, were Bubba's actions indefensible?
Absolutely, Josh. To be honest with you, I don't know how anybody I don't know how anybody could defend what we saw with Bubba Wallace on Sunday. It was just something that you really don't want to see in racing at all, especially on a mile and a half track. Typically, we would see payback at a short track like a Bristol, Martinsville, or Richmond, where the speeds are a lot lower. But a mile and a half track where they're going over 180 miles per hour, 190, and for that to happen on the front stretch, that's just not right at all. I was actually shocked to see that happen. If Bubba was going to get some type of retaliation against Larson, you think he'd try to, at least just try to spin him out in the corners where they're slowing down instead of doing that on the straight. And I was even more upset about this situation because this year, thinking about this new next gen car and the flaws in the design, where the drivers are taking a lot harder hits than they should be taking in these cars, and for Bubba Wallace to come down and just hook Larson like that, that's just totally wrong. And like I was saying, I have no idea how anybody could defend what we saw on the track because, in my opinion, Josh, it was really ugly to see that happen. And hopefully, Bubba's going to be able to learn from this because it was certainly not a good look from him to lose his temper like that.
Absolutely. And getting back to the penalty, no points were taken away, no fine issued, just a one-race suspension for Bubba to sit out a week and reflect on his actions. He won't be in the car this weekend at Homestead-Miami Speedway, but he'll return the following week at Martinsville Speedway. Now, Bubba Wallace did release a statement saying, "I want to apologize for my actions on Sunday following the on-track incident with Kyle Larson and the number 5 car. My behavior does not align with the core values that are shared by the 23XI Racing and our partners, who have played a crucial role in my incredible journey to the top of this great sport. I want to apologise to NASCAR and the fans, along with Christopher Bell, Joe Gibbs Racing, and Toyota, for putting them in a situation in the playoffs that they do not deserve. I compete with immense passion, and with passion at times comes frustration. Upon reflecting, I should have represented our partners and core team value better than I did by letting my frustrations follow me outside of the car. You live and learn, and I intend to learn from this." Well, he called the move dangerous act and put other drivers at risk, and felt the retaliation of wrecking someone on a straight definitely crossed the line as well. Of course, the suspension set off an uproar with many people wondering why they didn't suspend other drivers who who did the same thing in the past, continuing the theme of consistency and inconsistent calls. Like no suspension for Ty Gibbs at Texas for running into Ty Dillon on pit road, which could have forced Dillon into pit crew members performing a pit stop. Or Noah Gragson wrecking Sage Karam on a straight at Road America that tore up a bunch of equipment. And bringing Ben in now as well, alongside Kobe, should the suspension of Bubba Wallace set a new precedent for drivers who take things too far when retaliating?
Yes. And Josh, I'll reiterate a lot of what I said with you on the Encore show on Monday night and a lot of what you said on the Encore show earlier in July when the Gregson incident happened. We were calling for a suspension then. This has nothing to do with coming down harder on Bubba Wallace for whatever reason. This has nothing to do with coming down harder on somebody because they're driving in the Cup Series. This needs to be the precedent going forward for anybody who does something this egregious in any of NASCAR's divisions at all. And I want to point out something that I didn't even realize. I have to be honest and own it here. I was not on the wrap-up show on Sunday, and for the first time in a very long time, I made a conscious decision because of the frustration that I had following the finish of the Charlotte Roval and what was going on with Bubba Wallace's teammate Kurt Busch and his emotional announcement on Saturday. I did not watch a single lap of the Cup Series race live on Sunday as it was unfolding. I made a conscious decision. I just said, I need a week away from this. It's been too emotionally draining, and I need to take a step back. So obviously, with the firestorm that was created when the incident happened, I saw the initial impact in the wreck when Bubba turned Kyle Larson on the straightaway, and I saw the fight. I thought the frustration with fans with what happened after the crash was because Bubba Wallace was walking towards Kyle Larson and they were close to the racing surface as the fight was taking place, and people were concerned about that, bringing back the memories of Tony Stewart and Kevin Ward Jr. and that unfortunate tragic incident 8 years ago. I didn't realize that Bubba's car actually came to a stop on the racing surface, and he actually had to walk down across the straightaway on a hot racetrack to then go confront Kyle Larson and instigate the fight. And I think that that just only further makes the incident that much more unacceptable and, like Kobe just said, indefensible. And it's an incredibly, incredibly unfortunate situation for everybody involved. I hope Bubba Wallace takes this week away from the track to do a little bit more self-reflecting and recognize that what he did was wrong. But I also hope NASCAR holds true to this precedent going forward. Ty Gibbs, I think that's an incident that I think really got swept under the rug, all things considered. It hasn't blown up like the Bubba Wallace incident or even the Noah Gragson incident did. Somebody could have been really seriously hurt or killed because you're playing games there on pit road. I mean, there have been numerous examples. We can bring up Hocevar this year, Ben Rhodes in the Truck Series not so long ago. Obviously, people are flashing back to Martinsville with Matt Kenseth and Joey Logano. We'll be going back there in a couple of weeks' time as well. But the new precedent going forward needs to be that if something is this obvious in terms of premeditated intention, whether it's for retaliation or whatever the case may be, to intentionally wreck somebody, particularly in light of the concerns regarding safety of the next-gen cars in the Cup Series, the hammer needs to be put down. A one-race suspension at minimum needs to be set going forward so that we can send a message, particularly to the young drivers who have kind of grown up not knowing a world outside of boys have at it, if you will, that this is not okay, this is not going to be tolerated, and that needs to be the new standard going forward across all of NASCAR's events.
Well said, Ben. I totally agree with everything you said, and that was the problem that I really had about this whole situation. Thinking about what's the safety situation right now with the next gen car, and for this incident to happen, and if you flash back to
Looks like we might have just lost Kobe.
Oh, well, that's disappointing.
Not sure what just happened there.
Well, we'll hopefully get Kobe back shortly as well. Thankfully, I've got some dual controls this time around as well. And hopefully Kobe will be back in ever so shortly. But until he is, we'll move further along. Now, earlier in the summer, a lot of people did criticize Bubba Wallace for how he responded to his teammate's mistake on pit road at Nashville Super Speedway as well. Bubba Wallace lashed out at his team on the radio, which isn't too uncommon for NASCAR drivers when frustration reaches a breaking point. One driver with a lot of emotional outbursts over the radio, though, throughout his career is Wallace's teammate, Kurt Busch. And as you said, Ben, as well, has announced his retirement and stepping away from full-time racing at the end of this season. as well, and from permanently from now on as he recovers from his concussion. Now, being a veteran of the sport who's been a part of his fair share of controversies, Busch has taken the younger Wallace under his wing and mentoring to help mature as a driver. Before we get to the 23 Excise Racing statement, I know Kobe's back in if he wants to continue his point before he was cut off due to technical difficulties. Do you want to throw it back in, Kobe, or do you want to carry on?
All right, Josh, I'll go ahead and finish my point. And I want to apologize for that. That was totally out of my controls. It seems like StreamYard kind of threw me out for some crazy reason that I don't understand. But we'll keep going. But as I was saying, I really think that the thing that upset me the most with this entire situation was the fact that the drivers are taking much harder hits with these cars, and for Bubba Wallace to do that, it's just wrong. No matter how you look at it, and if you flash back earlier to this year, I remember when Bubba was on the radio. I can't remember if it was Talladega or Atlanta. It was one of those tracks, but Bubba was heard on the radio saying, "I don't know if I can take any more of these type of hits," and he obviously took a hit there getting back at Larson. We're very lucky that nobody was seriously injured in that accident, and I think that's why Steve O'Donnell from NASCAR said that this was a really dangerous act that put other drivers at risk, and they felt that retaliation or wrecking someone in the way that Bubba did definitely crossed the line in this situation. And I absolutely agree that this should be the new precedent moving forward, and NASCAR really needs to make sure that if a driver retaliates in this manner, they need to suspend them. And I look at all of these situations through an objective, unbiased lens. I feel like the one race suspension for Bubba Wallace is absolutely justified, and I felt like a suspension for Noah Gragson for what he did at Road America should have warranted a suspension. But Gragson caused the wreck, and he was able to continue with the race. At the time, I was saying he should have been parked for the rest of the race, but NASCAR, just ended up doing like a little points penalty, nothing that really hurt him in the long run. So it was, in all, that was a slap on the wrist. But I believe Gragson should have received the same penalty that Bubba Wallace got, and hopefully with this suspension, this will be the precedent moving forward. Because if we see something similar in the future and they decide not to suspend a driver, then a lot of people are going to be outraged and pointing fingers.
Absolutely, and thanks, Kobe. Because I didn't want to run away from your point as well, as we never heard your views earlier on in the week. Now, getting back to 23XI's racing statement as well, it's up on the screen, hopefully in just a second as well. Here we go. And it reads as 23XI is aligned with NASCAR on the one race suspension issued to Bubba, and we understand the need for the series to take a clear stand on the incidents that took place at Las Vegas. Now, further on as well, Bubba's actions are not in keeping with the values of our team and partners. We have spoken to Bubba and expressed our disapproval of how he handled the situation. Bubba has made impressive strides this season, and this experience is an opportunity for him to further learn and grow as a competitor in NASCAR. As a result of the penalty, it's John Hunter Nemechek as well who would drive the number 45 Toyota this weekend at Homestead-Miami. And several veterans have also spoken out about the incident. Joey Logano said it couldn't have been the end of Kyle Larson, adding there's no room for that as well. And Brad Keselowski put out a tweet saying, can't go back in time to reverse Sunday, so no decision was going to be made to make everybody happy. This is a pivotal moment for our sport, given recent injuries. For what it's worth, I feel at NASCAR is making a tough but important statement to the garage that this isn't acceptable. And Kevin Harvick has put out 2 tweets, the first of which reads, intentionally hooking people in the rear right should never be acceptable. Protect us from ourselves. I hope this is the beginning of the end of it happening. His second tweet says, I've been guilty of several of these incidents you see happening, but I also had an iron fist of Mike Helton waiting for me, sorry about that, after I'd acted like a fool. I believe an iron fist is needed going forward, and that will trickle down. And going forward as well, bringing back in Ben and Kobe to relieve me for a second with a migraine problem. A question to you both as well. What are your thoughts on the team statements, response from the drivers, and do you think that Kurt Busch's past mistakes as well makes him the right person to help Bubba move forward from this incident? Because he has developed an awful lot over his career.
Well, Josh, starting with the team statement, I think 2311 Racing statement was quite a strong statement, and I'm glad that they decided, that NASCAR was right here and that Bubba was wrong. I'm sure on Monday morning during the competition meeting, Bubba Wallace certainly heard a lot from Denny Hamlin, probably Toyota as well. And Christopher Bell spoke to the media today, and he said that Bubba apologized to him on the Monday morning competition meeting for what happened, because if you watch Bubba's interview after the incident happened, he didn't really seem remorseful at all for what happened with Christopher Bell. So nice seeing that Bubba acknowledges that he was wrong there, to apologize to Bell, and I'm sure 2311 Racing is going to make sure that this doesn't happen again with Bubba Wallace and now Brad Keselowski, one of the veterans of the sport. He really feels like that NASCAR is sending a message here, and I totally agree with him. And Kevin Harvick, another longtime veteran of the sport, as you were saying, Josh, and intentionally hooking people in the right rear should never be acceptable. Protect us from ourselves. I hope this is the beginning of the end of it happening. Yeah, so a lot of the veterans are put on notice, and I think it's going to take a little bit for Bubba Wallace to regain the respect of the garage area, because I'm sure he lost some respect there, and he's really going to put in the work to get that back. I'm sure he'll be able to do that over time. And as for Kurt Busch, I think Kurt Busch is certainly the perfect driver to teach Bubba Wallace here, because Kurt Busch, we talked about him a lot on the Grid Live pre-race show on Saturday, and some of the things he's been through throughout his NASCAR career. As I was said on Saturday, Kurt Busch's career could have ended quite a few times, but he stuck with it. He kept growing as a person, and now Kurt Busch is actually one of the most, I don't know if I say beloved drivers, but a lot of people really respect Kurt Busch now in the garage, because so many years ago, many fans really disliked Kurt Busch because he had a hot temper, rubbed people the wrong way, made a whole bunch of mistakes. But in life, we all make mistakes, and we should have an opportunity to learn from them. And Kurt has certainly learned a lot over the years, and in recent years, we've really seen a more chill version of Kurt Busch, and now walking away from racing, going to be mentoring young drivers like Bubba Wallace. And I think during this 1 week suspension, Kurt Busch is somebody Bubba Wallace should definitely have in his ear.
All right, so there's several points I want to address here. I just want to be careful, make sure that I get through all of them. I want to start with Kevin Harvick's tweet, because I'm glad Kevin actually brought that up, because if we can actually go to the other one that he had, when he says, "I've been guilty of several of these instances." One thing that I haven't mentioned in listing all these examples is 2015 Fall Talladega, when Harvick had a car problem and essentially, spun out part of the field and caused a caution on the last green right checkered restart. And that ended up being how he advanced into the next round and ultimately to the championship four. I think, again, it's not an apples to apples comparison. I don't know if it's apples to oranges either. It might be red apples to green apples, because you're still racing in the Cup Series with this playoff format trying to advance in the next round. And it's still driving a Cup Series car. It's still a dangerous situation. It can be, but that's yet another example of an intentional wreck that largely went unpunished and allowed Harvick to stay in the championship fight, which he finished second to Kyle Busch in. So, Harvick is admitting there that, he's been a part of this culture that's been created. And I want to bring up a comment from a chat. I see one of my friends, Kyle Murphy. Good to see you here, Kyle. The sad part of this to me is knowing that this is part of the culture NASCAR has been working to create for years: maximum aggression at all times to win no matter what. And I brought this up on the Encore show as well. I'm glad Kyle did in the chat here. It always goes back to me to the aggression that we've seen. I feel like you've seen these incidents, particularly the last few years, kind of increase in number as they've gone on. Desperate drivers have been forced to do desperate things. And because of the boys have at it culture that NASCAR, embraced in the early 2010s, these drivers know that for the most part, they've been able to get away with it for the last several years. And I think that even if you're not conscious of it, it's in the back of your mind that, I saw a couple of people say it was unprecedented. I guess, in 2022, it's unprecedented. It's not unprecedented in all of NASCAR history or even recent NASCAR history, given Kyle Busch on Ron Hornaday and Matt Kenseth on Joey Logano to actually suspend a driver. But it's very rare that they've suspended drivers for this. Usually it's a fine, usually it's a points penalty, not a full-on suspension. I think the culture, and this goes back to what we were saying earlier in the show, the culture needs to change now. And this is a very clear message that NASCAR is sending, and I would have wanted them to send this no matter what drivers were involved here. Noah Gragson should have been suspended, and you do not double down on a wrong so that you can correct your consistency. NASCAR lost the consistency label a long time ago. They've been consistently inconsistent for years. I mean, how many times have we said this on this show, on other grid shows? They lost that a long time ago. There's no getting that back, at least in the near future. But two wrongs don't make a right. And my frustration is not that Bubba Wallace was suspended. It's that Noah Gragson wasn't. It's that Ty Gibbs wasn't. It's that Jeff Gordon wasn't in 2012. It's that Carl Edwards wasn't in 2010. And that'll lead me to Adam's comment here. Kyle Petty said that Bubba Wallace should be suspended for the rest of the year after what happened at Vegas. I said on the Encore show Monday night that I vividly remember Kyle Petty on Speed Channel back in 2010 saying that Carl Edwards should be parked for a few races for what he did to Brad Keselowski. So this is not a new argument that people are making just because it's Bubba Wallace or just because of, whatever the situation is. I think I still have no idea how Jeff Gordon avoided a suspension at Phoenix in 2012. I've got to think maybe it had something to do with his consecutive start streak. NASCAR didn't want to end that because he was on track to pass Ricky Rudd in a few years. That's the only thing I can think of. He absolutely should have been suspended for that. And there are countless other examples. Bubba Wallace's would have been one of them, but I'm glad NASCAR put their foot down and said, we're not going to tolerate this any longer, and we need a culture change in this sport. Now, to get back to the question and address that here for Josh and Kobe, I think you're absolutely right. Kurt Busch is the perfect example and the perfect person to help Bubba Wallace through this. And I'm so glad that despite the emotions of his press conference on Saturday morning this weekend in Vegas, Kurt remains committed. He's going to stay with Toyota. He's going to stay with 2311. He's going to stay with his existing partners, and he is going to help continue to build the team through this. And I think Kurt's legacy in this sport, beyond just being a champion, beyond being a Daytona 500 winner, beyond being a surefire first ballot Hall of Famer, is that if you look at him post-Penske Racing, post-Team Penske in his career, and even I would argue with Team Penske as well, every team that he has gone to in his career that he's been with, he has elevated. He's taken to the next level. He helped put Furniture Road Racing on the map. He dragged that Phoenix racing car to a near win at Sonoma in 2012 and ended up getting a podium out of it. He took Stewart Haas Racing to new heights with their brand new car. He helped elevate Ganassi. He's helped elevate 2311 here and got them a win. Kurt Busch is somebody who, like you mentioned, Kobe, who has been on a similar journey. He had a lot of hardships earlier in his career. He worked through them. He got the help that he needed. He reinvented himself. And the reason why it was so emotional watching him at Las Vegas in the media center this weekend announce that he was stepping away is exactly what you mentioned, Kobe. He has become one of the most respected drivers in the entire NASCAR garage. He's gone from somebody who verbally abused Dr. Jerry Punch at Homestead, who threatened to beat up Bob Pockrass on pit road at Dover at the lowest of his lows, took that time to reinvent himself and get the help that he needed, and has turned into a respected leader and somebody that we are all certainly going to miss and have missed this season racing full-time in the NASCAR Cup Series. It's truly the end of an era to see him go, and we're absolutely going to miss him. But at the same time, I'm so glad he's sticking around in a different role at Toyota and at 2311, because he's exactly the kind of person that Bubba Wallace needs to help him work through the issues that he's going through in his Cup Series career right now.
Absolutely agree with you. Nice to see him staying around in a move very much similar to what Dario Franchitti's done in IndyCar as well after his accident, which forced his retirement back in 2013. Now, shifting gears, let's talk about the driver who will replace Wallace in the number 45 Toyota. As you saw in the team statement, it'll be the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series regular John Hunter Nemechek who will be taking over. Before, Ty Gibbs stepped in for the injured Kurt Busch. It was previously reported that Nemechek was going to be in the 23XI racing. There'll be the reserve driver in case one of their primary drivers couldn't race. However, Gibbs ended up getting the call to get Cup experience instead of Nemechek as planned earlier in the season. And we'll bring in Ben for the last question before he disappears with us, and Kobe is answering as well. With no plans announced yet for 2023, is this the perfect opportunity for Nemechek to prove his worth in quality Cup equipment?
Absolutely. And listen, I think, John Hunter Nemechek's another guy that made it to the Cup Series with Front Row Motorsports, and somebody that, had an opportunity with not necessarily a top team to get Cup experience, but when that Cup experience or Cup opportunity went away, he went back to the Truck Series with a top team, with a partnership with Toyota, and ended up having a lot of success and has continued to have a lot of success, and is now one of Toyota's top drivers in their pipeline that they could go to call upon to set foot in a Cup Series car and replace Bubba Wallace for this race. And I think it's absolutely the right decision. It would be kind of cool to see them go with a little bit of a wild card, but I think Nemechek at the same time is the obvious choice here. And I think he's going to do a good job for them. And I think he's also going to gain some valuable experience that he could use going forward. I see we have some comments coming in the chat room here from Upright Fossil. The penalty doesn't really deter this type of behavior. In this case, neither the driver nor the team face serious consequences. If the penalties for serious infractions carried over, I think it's going to continue here. Upright's comment is, at least, for 12 or more months, then teams might lose a championship run, and drivers and teams would be well aware of how serious the matter is. Neither Bubba nor the team, I believe, that's what he meant, nor the team are in a championship contending role this year. Well, Gibbs, but they were eliminated from a championship weeks ago. And I guess maybe referring to the owner's swap that they did there. So I'm not sure. Upright, were you advocating that Bubba Wallace would have had to sit for an entire year there? Because I think the one race was unprecedented enough. I think whatever NASCAR decided to do, I think was going to be controversial, and you were going to have people on either ends of the extreme here saying that, it's too much or it's not enough. He should have sat for a year. This is unprecedented. He shouldn't have sat at all. I think a message has been sent here already with even just the one race suspension. Now, again, I would have had no problem seeing him sit through a year. I think we're far enough close to the end of the season that that wouldn't have been a step too far. But I think, to sit a guy for an entire year, I think would maybe be a little bit much. I think somebody should sit down with Bubba Wallace, make sure that he understands. And I think he knows at this point probably that what he did was, obviously indefensible. But I think, it was, I said it on Twitter, it was a catch-22. Some were going to say that it doesn't go far enough. Others were going to say it's a step too far. But at the end of the day, NASCAR had to send a message, and I do believe that they did that. But to close the book on Nemechek here, to answer the question, he is the perfect driver to step in here, and it's going to be good for everybody involved, I think, to get him a Cup start under his belt with 2311.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a great opportunity for John Hunter Nemechek. We remember when he went to the NASCAR Cup Series with Front Row Motorsports. I think Nemechek certainly he had a few good runs in the car, but he decided to do a full reset, go to a championship contending organization with Kyle Busch Motorsports. Been doing really well there. Very well could have won that Truck Series championship last year, but unfortunately had issues in Phoenix and just couldn't seal the deal. And he's going to try to put himself in a better position this year so he can try to get the championship that got away in 2021. So I think this is a really good opportunity for John Hunter Nemechek to go out there and Sean, I kind of want to end this segment talking about something that I feel like it really hasn't been talked about yet. Well, I mean, I know it's been talked about on social media, but I don't think it's really been talked about on this show yet. The fact that this incident, it was uncalled for what Bubba did to Kyle Larson, but you know what else is uncalled for? The horrible response that's coming in the mainstream media from a lot of people, especially people in the political world who know absolutely nothing about NASCAR, but the name Bubba Wallace is a trigger word for them. It doesn't matter what Bubba Wallace did. If you see Bubba Wallace, they see he was involved in some type of controversy, they're going to run with it, and all the racist people are going to start coming out of the woodworks and saying a whole bunch of really nasty, mean things. And that's something else I wanted to call attention to, because that's just as wrong as what Bubba Wallace did on the racetrack. And we all know these people in politics, they have their own agenda, and we know that this dates back to what happened at Talladega in 2020, when they had the FBI come in to see if a hate crime had been committed, and his garage stall with the news. And since then, Bubba Wallace has become a major trigger word for them, and that's the part why I hate that Bubba Wallace was involved in this incident. If it was I wish it was any other driver who had right hooked Kyle Larson. I really do, but the fact that it was Bubba Wallace, we all knew it wasn't going to end well, and that's why you're seeing a lot of heated things going on right now on social media.
I'm glad you brought that up, Kobe. And, I think I completely agree and echo your statements here. There's been a lot of people in the political world, a lot of people in the Facebook comments and the Twitter replies that simply don't know what they're talking about. But, they see Bubba Wallace as nothing more than a left-wing political hack or whatever, other awful, horrible crap that I can't repeat here on the air that they want to throw at him. And of course, that's equally as uncalled for as well. But I do want to bring up, because, again, it's the elephant in the room, that it was the two worst possible drivers who have been involved in this. The fact that Kyle Larson was on the receiving end of it as well, of course. Somebody I saw said that it was unbelievable that NASCAR saw it fit to sit Kyle Larson an entire year for saying a word, but Bubba Wallace tries to assault a guy and he's only going to get one race. That's absolutely ridiculous. It's a nonsensical comparison, and I'll tell you why. Kyle Larson was indefinitely suspended by NASCAR. That is true, but Kyle Larson lost sponsorship because of what happened. His team let him go because he lost the sponsorship and because of what happened. So even if NASCAR had reinstated him, there wouldn't necessarily have been a place for him to easily slide back into. I'm sure some team would have taken him up and offered up a ride to him just because of the great talent that he is. But it would not have been as simple as driving the 42 car as soon as NASCAR came back from the COVID break, or only after one race or whatever. But Kyle Larson didn't even apply for reinstatement until late in the 2020 season, because he was going through sensitivity training. He was taking time away to work on himself, to better his image, and he was going dirt racing for his own team that he owns. So he didn't even try to get back into NASCAR. If he had tried to expedite the process as fast as he could and said, I'm willing to take a start and park truck series ride if I have to, I just want to be back in NASCAR again, I'm sure there would have been a path forward for Kyle Larson to return before the 2020 season ended. But regardless of whatever happened with Larson, to compare what happened with him on iRacing and the word that he said to an action on the track with Bubba Wallace, it's a nonsensical comparison. It doesn't even make any sense to even try to go there. And I think it's equally as unfortunate that Bubba Wallace was involved on the one end that he was, but also that Kyle Larson was on the other end that he was, because people see those names because those stories got mainstream media attention and they run with it to fit their agenda, and they don't know what they're talking about. We were just on the Encore show a couple weeks ago after Good Morning America ran that piece at Talladega, and I said, listen, this is the perfect example of every time mainstream media tries to cover NASCAR, they merge stories together, they blend things to draw in the ratings, to bring in the pictures that are going to fire people up, and they simply don't know what they're talking about. And it's a bad idea every time they try to do it, because they're always going to mess something up. I apologize to see we've got some comments in from Upright again here. Kobe, when the races start, NASCAR has already shown they will rally around him and defend him and treat him fairly. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, anybody that's saying that, that NASCAR only suspended Bubba Wallace because of his race, they could not be further wrong in that as well. And that's equally as wrong of a statement to make from them. Because NASCAR showed through the steps that they have taken the last 2.5 years in particular, that they are committed to bettering themselves when it comes to diversity and giving people like Bubba Wallace opportunities to compete at the highest level of NASCAR. They rallied around him when there was the possibility that maybe a heinous act had taken place. And Steve Phelps has even admitted that the word alleged should have been used. So people need to stop throwing Bubba Wallace under the bus for that incident. NASCAR mishandled the initial statement that they put out. That's why the whole thing blew up into a misunderstanding. It was not a hoax. It was a misunderstanding. But again, that's something else for another day. But I'm with you, Kobe. I hate that it was Bubba Wallace, because all of this stuff has come right back in to the mainstream attention, and people are picking it up and running with it and bringing up those incidents once again. And it's absolutely awful, and it's sad. And I knew that's why it was so frustrating when I first saw it happen, because I knew that this is exactly where it was going to go. And that's one of the most frustrating aspects of this.
Yeah, certainly, Ben. And I really hope that Bubba Wallace is doing as well as he can be right now, because in the past he's talked about his mental health struggles and all of that, and I know when you hear all this stuff being said about you in the media by people who don't even know who you are personally, don't know anything about you, can't even tell you what track they were racing at on Sunday, and they're out there using your image, using your name because it fits their agenda, and all that hate's gonna come his way. I'm sure he's probably deleted social media off of his phone, and should probably do that for the foreseeable future. But being Bubba Wallace right now is really tough. Anytime he's involved in a controversy, whether it was in the past, now, or in the future, there's always going to be those people who come at him. So I really hope he's doing well right now, because I'm sure this has been a really, really tough time.
And at this point, we'll have to let Ben go as well as we move on to the next part of the show. Ben, thanks very much for joining us here. I can't wait to see you over the weekend as well, as we cover all the things as well, including the US Grand Prix for F1. So take care, and thanks for being on tonight.
Thank you, guys. I should be back on Wrap Up on Sunday, obviously for the US Grand Prix, Josh, like you mentioned, and of course for Homestead. So we'll see you then.
Can't wait. Thank you, Ben. See you later. And moving on to our second story of the evening as well, with earlier today, we received an updated calendar for the 2022/2023 ABB-FIA Formula E World Championship season. And a few changes has emerged as well, because on February the 25th, 2023, Formula E will race in Cape Town, South Africa. That has been reinstated to the calendar. It joins Hyderabad in India and Sao Paulo, Brazil, as the newest cities that'll see Formula E racing for the first time in Season 9. Another change is that the Berlin E-Prix now again becomes a double-header race weekend on April 22nd and 23rd. Personal there. My birthday is the 21st, so good weekend for me. And one place is missing from the schedule now, and that is the Seoul E-Prix as well, or Seoul E-Prix, depending how you pronounce it. And Formula E co-founder and chief championship officer Alberto Longo says the renovation work at the Olympic Stadium in Seoul means they won't be able to return to the same location next season. However, Formula E continues to explore other options to continue racing in South Korea at another location. And the graphic there, courtesy of Formula E. Kobe, bringing you back in now, are you surprised that Formula E's testing out the South African market before Formula One? And would you like to see Formula E stay in South Korea?
Well, Josh, to answer the first question for you, I'm actually not surprised to see Formula E testing out the market before Formula One. Well, for Formula E, it's a lot easy. It seems like it's a lot easier for them to be able to move around from place to place all over the world versus Formula One. Right now, seem like the only realistic solution for South Africa is not like a street race or whatever, but try to go to the Kyalami circuit, and it seems like that track's going to need some upgrades before Formula One will be able to go there. Yeah, Formula E is going to be racing in Cape Town, South Africa. Should be real interesting to see how the motorsport racing fans take that event. I'm always open to new things, and I think the South African market is something that we need to see more racing series explore. I know Lewis Hamilton's been very vocal about Formula One needing to race in Africa, especially the South Africa, and maybe we'll see the South African Grand Prix in the future in Formula One. But for now, we're just gonna have to settle for the South African E-Prix in Cape Town. And the second part of the question, talking about Formula E staying in South Korea, to be honest, I'd really like to see the Seoul E-Prix come back. I really enjoyed that doubleheader season finale. Thought it was a great atmosphere, racing through the stadium section there, seeing all of the fans up there who were really excited to see the cars. It would be a shame if Formula E doesn't return to Seoul. I actually really enjoyed that particular race weekend.
Oh, me too. 100%. Myself and Edward Hunter were commentating on it as well. Loved every second of it. It proved to be a true, unique Formula E circuit as well. So let's hope we get back to that track soon and maybe go somewhere else for a year or so, because it certainly did give a unique atmosphere. And as you can see from the calendar, Season 9 is almost complete, but there are still a few open slots. 2 race dates haven't been figured out yet. Round 10 on May 20th. And round 13 on June 24th. And looking at the schedule, Formula E will continue to visit many cities around the world, but there's currently no scheduled race in the United States, with the New York City E-Prix nowhere in sight. And Kobe, do you anticipate that one of those empty slots should be and will be an American race?
Josh, to be honest, I can't really say right now, but I will say it is super unfortunate if the New York City E-Prix that does not come back. And see right there on the screen, you have round 10, you have round 13. I'm hoping one of those slots is going to be for New York, for New York City. I'm really hoping, but I'm actually not too optimistic that that's going to happen. I know Formula E hasn't really taken off in the United States as they really hope. I think Formula E is a great series. I know a lot of American race fans are really on the fence about Formula E, and I know the ratings certainly haven't been there. But hopefully, if they don't race in the United States next season, whether it's New York City or another major American city like Los Angeles, Miami, even Las Vegas, Boston. I'm just naming just random cities. Cleveland. If we're not going to see a Formula E race next season, hopefully they'll come back to the United States in 2024. But it would be such a shame to lose Formula E's presence in America.
I know, I love the New York track as well. It's one of my favorites. But if we can't go back to New York for whatever reason, I think Long Beach is a pretty good alternative as well, as I've been saying for a long, long time. And I would put Long Beach Formula E on May 20th, because that's a week before the Indy 500. That's a perfect little tee up to what we've got coming. So it's slap bang in the middle of qualifying day as well, so looks good to me. Now, our third story as well coming into this evening is Corvette Racing announcing its 2023 driver lineup that will see them continue in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship and the FIA World Endurance Championship. Starting with IMSA, Corvette will only enter one CR.8 in the GTD Pro, with Antonio Garcia and Jordan Taylor returning full-time. Tommy Milner, who's been racing over in WEC this season, joins Garcia and Taylor as the endurance driver. However, the biggest change for Corvette is the WEC eliminating, of course, the GTE Pro class. So that means we'll see the American squad transition to GTE AM. Nicky Katzberg receives a promotion from his endurance role to a full-time race seat here, and gentleman driver Ben Keating adds the Corvette to the growing list of cars he has driven throughout his racing career. Corvette will name the final driver to its GTE AM program at a later date. But with a vacant slot, that means Nick Tandy will not return to Corvette after racing with General Motors for the last 2 years. Graphics courtesy here of Corvette Racing. And Kobe, you follow IMSA and WEC obviously a lot more closely than I do. I follow WEC more than IMSA. So how big of a change is it for Corvette switching to a Pro-Am class? And what other details can you share with our viewers about Nick Tandy's departure from the team?
And just before I answer that question, got a comment in the chat room from our own Ben Snyder, who was just on the air with us. He says, very unfortunate to see New York City go. If that's confirmed, you went to the inaugural event in 2017. They seem committed to holding that for at least a decade. Yeah, Ben. I remember when Formula E came to New York as well. There was a lot of hype surrounding that event, and it seemed like the drivers really loved to go there. And I know Antonio Felix Acosta, he said that was his favorite circuit to go to, his favorite place to go, to the Big Apple and race. And I felt like that was an event that we could have had in this country for a long time, as you said, but at least for a decade. And super unfortunate if it cannot be fit into the schedule somehow. Unfortunately, it wouldn't be a double header event, but maybe we can get a single race. I know there's still hope until they confirm that it's gone. And getting back to the question that you asked, Josh, this is definitely going to be a huge departure for Corvette Racing, switching to Pro-Am. I know in 2024 they're going to be switching to the GT3 platform, bringing a brand new Corvette. And we all know the history of GT3 racing. Customer racing is a huge part of the GT3 platform. So this will be a good experience for them to have Ben Keating as one of their customers in GTM. Ben Keating, one of the most distinguished gentlemen drivers in the world, and for a driver who, well, for someone like Ben Keating, racing is actually not his day job. He's actually a car dealer who goes racing in his spare time, and that's one of the coolest things about sports car racing. Your bronze and your silver drivers who who don't make professional racing, their main career, they really add a lot to the sport, and we really couldn't do the sports car racing without them in Corvette racing, running in the IMSA GTLM class with the GT platform for so many years, running all pro driver lineups. Next year with the pro-ams is certainly going to be a huge change. And a lot of people are wondering about the future of Corvette racing, because after 2023, it's really up in the air, because GT racing in the future at Le Mans is just going to be strictly pro-am, no more all-pro driver lineups. And Corvette really wanted to see GT Pro continue for another year, but unfortunately, that just wasn't possible, because they would really just be racing, by themselves, and that's not fun at all, because Porsche's going to be stepping up to the Le Mans Hypercar class, and then over in IMSA GTP, Ferrari is also going to be stepping up to the Hypercar class in the WEC, so they're going to abandon their factory GT Pro programs, and that only leaves one Corvette. So who are you going to race with? So it really made no points. As I said, sports car racing, the market speaks for itself, and so one Corvette is not good enough to justify keeping GT Pro for an entire season. I know if they would have kept it for Le Mans only, maybe you would have some takers, but entire season, Corvette racing would really just be racing for nothing if they were the only car in their class, because they'd be guaranteed the championship, and that would make no sense at all from a business and common sense standpoint. And details about Nick Tandy's departure, I know Sports Car 365 is reported, and I've heard some of the rumblings as well. There's rumors that Nick Tandy, who was a Porsche factory driver for so many years, he could be returning to Porsche to race with the new Team Penske Porsche LMDH program. I'm not sure if that would be in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship or the World Endurance Championship, but there are certainly rumors circulating that we could see Nick Tandy in a Penske Porsche prototype next season.
Sounds absolutely good. And I think I know what I'm doing in my career in the future. I'll do Le Mans as a gentleman driver. I'd love to do that. That'd be fantastic. Now, as always, here's Matt White from Grid History with his latest news.
Hi everybody, Matt White here. It's that time of the week again where we bring you up to speed with the Grid Endurance Performance Index. Only the one race to tell you about from this past weekend as the season begins to wind down. And it happened at Portimao, the final round of the European Le Mans Series, the 4 hours of Portimao, and it was won in LMP2 by the Prema team, Juan Manuel Correa, Louis Delatraz and Ferdinand Habsburg, the winners that secured the championship for that squad, and the Delatraz and Habsburg duo have been in that car for the season, the Drivers' Championship, so congratulations to them. In LMP3, the winners of the race were also the champions, Malfi Jakobsen, Maurice Smith and Michael Benham, the winners in LMP3, and I say securing the championship for those 3 drivers as well. And a historic moment in GTE. We'll hear more about it later on in the week in the Women in Motorsport show. Sarah Bovey, Michelle Gatting and Dorian Pin getting the win for the Iron Dames in a crazy wet, dry race at the weekend in Portimao. Congratulations to them on their first win in the European Le Mans Series. A big moment as well. They didn't do enough to take the championship though. That was won by Lorenzo Ferrari, Christian Reed and Gian Maria Bruni for the Proton team. So the only non-winners of the race at the weekend were not the champions, was in GTE. So the European Le Mans Series has wrapped up. We've got 2 events coming this weekend in the EPI. It's the final races, both coming from Germany actually. At Hockenheim, 2 races for the ADAC GT Masters over the weekend, their final round, and the final round of the season for the Nürburgring Landstrecke Series on the Nordschleife on Saturday. So 2 big events coming your way, which I'll tell you about results-wise next week. Let's have a look at the updated scores in the EPI. Not much going on really at the top. Louis Delatraz, with his win at the weekend, his 5th scoring win of the year, gets him up to 15th, a couple of points behind his teammate for next season, Philippe Albuquerque. So they're right next to each other there. Louis will be part of that WTR squad in the IMSA Championship next year, but none of the top 14 were in action at the weekend. Delatraz the highest of them, and he jumps to 15th. Ferdinand Habsburg is winning teammate from the weekend, by the way, 35th. So not much going on at the top of town. Jules Gounon did get a 2nd place at the British GT at Donington in their final race at the weekend, but British GT not part of our scoring. It may be next year when we have a bit of a scoring review over the winter, but a lot of those guys towards the top there, Raffaele Marciello, the leader included, he'll be in action at the weekend in that ADAC GT Masters races at Hockenheim. So we'll bring you the results from them and an update on the scores next week.
Thank you, Matt. And before we get into our next segment, I have some comments in the chat room from Upright Fossil saying you went to the GT World Challenge America 8-hour race at Indianapolis, which I believe that's a part of the Intercontinental GT Challenge thing that they have with SRO. You said it was well worth it and so many good things about that. Yeah, I saw a lot of those SRO long distance endurance events, but they're pretty cool. The only one that I really get to see each year is the Bathurst 12-hour. That's one of my favorite races in the world. For some reason, it's not. So I guess before we end our show tonight, you also said that a Formula E race list puts it close to Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan, which all have racetracks that would suit Formula E. They don't want to act right, so there we go. And you said plenty of race fans in the Midwest and easy access to all the tracks. Yeah, it would be really cool to see Formula E explore some more cities if they decide to continue racing in America in the future. Next, some more motorsports news from around the world. 2022 NASCAR Advanced Auto Parts Weekly Series National Champion Lane Riggs will get another start in the Camping World Truck Series. In his first two series starts at IRP in Richmond, Riggs finished 7th and 19th. He'll make his third start in the Truck Series season finale at Phoenix Raceway. Another race in the number 62 Hallmark Friesen Racing Toyota Tundra with sponsorship from Ramjack and Infinity Communications. Riggs previously told Racing America that his goal is to race full-time in the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series next year. And the graphic you see on the screen, courtesy of Riggs. Haas Formula One driver Kevin Magnussen will team up with his father, Jan Magnussen, a longtime Corvette factory driver, in a major sports car racing endurance event after the 2022 Formula One season concludes. Both Magnussens will compete in the Gulf 12 Hours at the Yas Marina circuit in Abu Dhabi, the same site as the F1 season finale. They'll drive the number 43 MDK Motorsports Ferrari 488 GT3, sharing it with owner-driver Mark Kwame. The Gulf 12 Hours will take place on December 11th, photo courtesy of MDK Motorsports. Star Power is returning to Mount Panorama in 2023 for the Liqui Moly Bathurst 12-hour endurance race that I just told you about on February 3rd through 5th. This year, the race occurred under a Pro-Am format with local teams and drivers from GT World Challenge Australia making up the show due to the effects from the coronavirus pandemic and global freight challenges. The biggest names in GT3 racing were absent in 2022, but next year all pro driver lineups will return, meaning we'll see a return of factory-backed teams and drivers. In the show, Class A will be split into Pro, Pro-Am, and Silver Cup. Class B will have Porsche GT3 Cup cars, including the latest 992 model GT4 cars, will be featured in Class C, and the Invitational class returns with the SRO spec GT2 cars. And after winning the NASCAR Xfinity Series race last weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway and advancing to the Championship 4, JR Motorsports announced that Josh Berry will return to the number 8 Chevrolet full-time in 2023. Berry has 3 wins this season, 5 total in his Xfinity career, and now he'll get a chance to compete for an Xfinity title at Phoenix in his first year of being playoff eligible. Josh Berry, so used to competing for championships, winning championships on short tracks all across America, and now he's going to get to do it on the big stage in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. And this is going to complete the 2023 Junior Motorsports Xfinity driver lineup. Berry back in the 8. Sam Mayer returns to number 1. Justin Allgaier in the number 7. And newcomer Brandon Jones replaces cut-bound Noah Gregson in the number 9 Chevrolet. And the graphic you see on the screen, courtesy of JR Motorsports. Spire Motorsports also confirmed its 2023 driver lineup in the NASCAR Cup Series yesterday. Corey LaJoie is going to return to the number 7 Chevrolet for the 3rd consecutive season. He'll continue working with crew chief Ryan Sparks, as Sparks also receives a promotion to Director of Competition at Spire Motorsports. Meanwhile, after fielding multiple drivers in the number 77 the last several years, we'll finally get some consistency there, and they'll have one driver in that seat for 2023, and that driver is going to be Ty Dillon, joining Spire Motorsports after a long season at Petty GMS, Kevin Bellicourt will be his crew chief. Graphic courtesy of Spire. And next we have one race to do our pick a winner for. A lot of people didn't really have good luck over the weekend, so relatively unchanged at the top of the leaderboard. Still barely leading Joe. Hopefully I'll be able to get some extra points and try to take home another pick a winner championship. And the race that we're going to be picking for, Josh, is going to be World Rally Championship, Rally Catalunya de España. We're going to start off with you. Who you think's going to get it done in Spain?
I'm going to need your help with the pronunciation here, but the Finnish driver, I want to say Rovanperä. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yeah, Kali Rovanperä.
Brilliant. I was always bad with names with championships I don't really know 100% on, but I have been following on and off and following your reports throughout the year as well. 6 wins, of course, for the team Toyota this season, and had some very bad events as well. I think, was it 4 in a row? They were outside the top 10 even as well. One last time out, though, so got a good feeling that they'll continue their championship challenge as well, and they're already quite ahead in the championship. So that's my pretty much outsider looking as to who could win the championship, the race in Catalonia with the stage events. I'll throw it back to you there, the expert in these matters, Kobe.
Well, Josh, I don't know if I want to call myself a World Rally Championship expert, but I'm gonna go with the driver who's already won the 2022 World Rally Championship, and that's the driver you just said, Kali Rovanperä. Is really funny because every time I've picked him for pick a winner this year, Rovanperä ends up not winning. So I'm determined I'm determined before the season ends, I'm gonna pick Rovanperä and he's going to get one. But knowing my luck, he's not going to win because I picked him, and literally every single time I don't pick him, he ends up winning. Yeah, so I don't know. I'm starting to get really bad at this. I think I lost my golden horseshoe for pick a winner because I had a big lead and I haven't hardly gotten any right lately.
Well, maybe my being here for sort of like a counter curse that might work, like the opposite of the commentator's curse. Rovanperä, there we go. That's even Ben agreeing with us as well. I had no idea they won the championship already as well. So that proves how much I've been on the ball this weekend. Anyway, we'll move on then to closing and a little bit of Formula One news as well to sort of add in the spice. And it's about Zach Brown as well, because news broke yesterday that McLaren F1 boss Zach Brown had written a letter to the FIA of Stefano Domenicali, the FIA of Mohammed Ben Sulayem as well. And according to BBC F1 head writer Andrew Benson, it had been dated the 12th of October. And it states that Brown praises the FIA's work on the cost cap and says policing it is critical to the sport's future. This is the full document as well. We've highlighted the bits I'm going to read out as well, because Brown goes on to say key details like the overspend breach and possibility the procedural breaches constitute cheating by offering a significant advantage across technical, sporting, and financial regulations. They go on also to say, we don't feel a financial penalty alone will be a sustainable penalty for an overspent breach or a serious procedural breach. There clearly needs to be a sporting penalty in these instances as determined by the FIA. Further on as well, they say, we suggest that the overspend should be penalised by way of reduction to the team's cost cap in the year following the ruling, that is 2022, and the penalty should be equal to the overspend plus a further fine. And of course, we will expect further details this coming weekend at the United States Grand Prix. And I thank Jenny Gao for texting during this program the fact that Zach Brown and Christian Horner will be together in the team's press conference on Saturday morning. So we'll have more news hopefully coming up when we get to the preview show. And taking a look at the schedule for the remainder of the week here. On Friday, we've got here on the Grid Network Women in Motorsport. On Saturday, we've got Grid Live pre-race at noon Eastern. And on Sunday, Grid Live wrap-up. That's 90 minutes after the NASCAR Cup Series race at Homestead-Miami Speedway. And of course, on Monday, we've got Grid Live Encore as always. And that pretty much rounds out for the show. So just a reminder to follow us on social media as well. And a big big thank you to our Patreon supporters, Colin, Mark, Deshelle, and Robin. And click on the link below to join our Patreon or buy me a coffee for a one-time donation. And also, of course, use public.com to invest in the stock market, and you can use code GRIDnet to earn free stocks. Get started and utilize the stock market for your own personal investment. For Kobe Lambeth at the podium finish and Ben Schneider, I'm Joshua Birch. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform, public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest. Start investing and networking on public.com.